Welcome to Allies or Enemies. I'm Jess.
And I am Sean, and today we are talking about Mass Effect, the board game. And our copy was provided for review, but the thoughts in this video are all our own. And Mass Effect is a 1 to 4 player cooperative game that is designed by Eric M. Lang and Calvin Wong Z. Loon.
And it is obviously based on the super popular video game series of Mass Effect, which Sean and I have played a little, but it's been years.
All we played is the very first one, and I could not do one of the driving stages, so I just gave up.
So we are primarily looking at this just from the board game perspective. But before we talk too much about it, let's look at how it plays.
In Mass Effect, you'll be taking on a campaign of 3 to 5 games, with your mission handily laid out by the mission book. On your turn, you roll all available dice, then choose 3 to place on your board and activate powers. These powers will include things like moving, hacking turrets and doors, completing mission objectives, reviving downed teammates, and attacking, which is adding damage tokens until enemies die. You will also gain character-specific powers for any stars you roll, and you'll get a bunch more powers as you gain experience from destroying the enemies or from other game effects. Then at the end of your turn, you flip a hazard card which will activate and or spawn bad guys. You win if you do whatever the mission asks you to. You lose if you either flip too many escalation cards and run out of time, or if Shepard gets KO'd. After 3 missions, or 5 if you do the optional loyalty missions, your campaign is over and you see how close you came to saving the universe.
So first of all, this was a lot easier to learn than I thought it might be, because sometimes when you get to games that are like dungeon crawler games, there's usually a whole bunch of rules overhead. But I think it did a pretty good job of laying everything out pretty clearly.
Yeah, it's surprisingly super smooth, and I really like that action selection system of you've got a whole bunch of dice, you're choosing 3 of those, putting them on your different actions, and you've got kind of a growing number of actions as you go. But I like that because you don't have all of them to kind of spread around. You're going to take those 3, you're going to take those 3, you're going to take those 3. You just choose from your pool, then you pass along the pool, then they're re-rolling that pool and choosing from a new pool. So I think that does a good job of kind of taking out some of the quarterbacking too.
And I think it helps that you only have 2 or 3 actions available at the very beginning of your special actions, as well as the basic actions. And then by the time you are unlocking more of those, you're more familiar with the game. So it does make it easier to be able to play your characters and get to know them as well. And I think part of the ease of the onboarding of the game is that there are only the 2 types of enemies. So you're either playing with the one deck, which is Cerberus, or the other deck, which is the Reaper deck. And so for setup, that makes it really straightforward because it's the one deck of cards you need to find, or the 3 types of enemies that get mixed in the bag.
Yeah, I really like that, because one of the things that kind of started to bum me out about Frosthaven was I was just I don't need all these enemies. 4 of these are basically the exact same enemy. I don't want 100 different chips to go through. And so I really like that it's that blue deck or the orange deck, 3 with each one. And those decks do play a decent amount differently too. The one deck is a lot more, they're just kind of ranged and they're shooting you, and they've also got turrets. And the other deck is I think it's got cannibals in it and stuff. I think that's the Reaper deck. I'm not sure which one's which, but they are rushing you and attacking you. And so they do both feel different, but there's enough variance between the missions as well that having those 2 decks is really it feels like plenty.
Yeah, and they're pretty straightforward too, because all those enemies only move 2. They all have the value printed for how much you have to hit them and how much they hit back. And then they might have one special thing, and that special thing is still even pretty straightforward to understand.
Yeah, there's only 4 special things, and I think they're I'm going to shoot you, I'll run at you if you shoot me, I'll run at you a little bit faster, and I don't know, and a 4th thing. But it is really easy to get onboarded onto this game, and that's going to be great because there's going to be a lot of folks who just know the video games, who aren't that into board games, and I don't think this is going to be too big of a hill for them to climb, even if they haven't played
that many things. But that kind of brings us to the replayability as well, the variability, because we were talking about the different bad guys. And so what are kind of some of the points that stood out to you for that?
Well, I think one of the key things is it is a campaign, but it's a campaign that's made up of, at minimum, 3 missions. But those missions are made up of like 10 possibilities. So you can start off with like one of 3 options, and then that branches to which one you choose next, and then that branches to which one you choose next. So already, if you complete a campaign, the most you would have played are 3 of those missions. So that definitely makes you want to like play through it again, choosing different branches. And then on top of that, the outcomes you can choose as well, because you can choose like to do a Paragon, which are the harder ones and will get you more points, or Renegade, which means you still complete it, but you're getting fewer points.
Yeah, you kind of wussed out. It's like you can do like the hard thing, which is quite a bit harder, or you can do, often it's like kind of beat the bad guy and then just run away.
Yeah.
So it's like the much easier thing, and we definitely did the easier thing a couple of times.
Yeah, so just even that, if you were to play through doing the easier option, which you'll probably want to do your first time playing, you'll even want to take the same path, but try to do it with the harder option too. And then there's the loyalty missions too. So between each of the core ones, you can pick a loyalty mission, meaning you can only play 2 loyalty missions if you choose to do both of them.
Right, and those ones connect to the different characters, and there are 5 different characters in this game, and they all play quite a bit differently. So there's Shepard, who's like the main character, and that one you can gender swap to whatever you feel like. But their thing is that you don't want to die. If you die with Shepard, you lose the game. So whoever Shepard is going to be kind of team leader, and they've got pretty basic, they can heal other people, that sort of stuff. Then you've got Tally, who does some cool like hacking stuff, has this little drone that flies around and can attack people for you or hack stuff. And her big thing is hacking doors, but she can also do this thing. She was probably my favorite one to play, where you can hack other bad guys. It's one that you can like work your way up to and get them to shoot different bad guys. And I really like doing that.
Yeah, and then I played a couple of them. So I played Rex, who's like just a huge puncher, and I always like taking the big punching ones in these kind of games. So you just get close and then you try and hit as many things as you can. And then Garrus, who is further away, so he's a shooter and a little bit weaker. So
right, he spent a lot of time needing to be revived.
I think you can play him well if you like
so
keep
too,
him
yeah.
back, but I just kept getting him in tricky situations. Yeah, I was able to unlock some pretty neat things. He has these proximity mines that damage people if they come closer. He can like walk away from people without triggering an opportunity attack. And we did his loyalty mission, which meant that his basic attack was just stronger overall.
And the one person we didn't really use was Liara. And Liara's thing is peeking ahead at the hazard card, so you kind of can be able to plan ahead, as well as using the biotic effect and the stunning, which are both things we didn't get to use too much. So that would, again, play quite a bit differently. And I would love to use your characters next time we play through, especially Rex.
Yeah, Rex was a lot of fun. And another point of variability are the missions themselves, because they do feel different. Some of them you're rescuing people. Other times you need to use like the hackers to get into the computer systems and like mess with them. Sometimes you're just trying to like collect a whole bunch of loot, and you're always just trying to kill tons of enemies.
But some of those missions definitely feel a lot harder than other ones. And some of that is just that the third one that you come across is meant to feel harder. And it does very much. But there are also ones where like we just felt like we could kind of walk around and do what we wanted. And ones where we felt like right at the start, like, holy cow, we are in big trouble. But there were some as well that felt like we were gonna lose, and then we managed to pull out a win. And I think that's really the sweet spot. And that was quite a few of them as well.
But let's talk about player count. So no matter how many players there are, you are always playing with 4 characters. So we played through as 2 players, so we each had 2 players. And I felt like that worked well. I didn't think playing with 2 characters was too overwhelming or too much to keep in my head. I do wonder when you're solo and you're all 4 of them, if that would feel like a lot.
Yeah, I think it probably would, because each one is fairly simple, and like you said earlier, it builds up nicely where you don't have that much to to learn at the beginning of the game, and then you are learning more and more as you go. But it doesn't feel like you're ever learning that much all at once. But even still, having those 4 characters and having to kind of switch your head from this to this to this to this, I think would be quite a bit for me. I think some people, if you know that you are good with dungeon crawlers and with playing with a bunch of people, great, you're not going to have a problem here. But if you're not sure about that, it would feel a little bit much to me. But 2 players I thought was maybe even the sweet spot. The tricky with 4 players is we had a couple missions where someone got knocked out early and they just kind of stayed knocked out for a while. I don't know if we were playing with 4 players, would we have run over and tried to revive them quicker, but it could be that you're sitting there for a round or 2 being like, please, please, someone help, someone come, because you can't play until someone else comes over and heals you.
Yeah, because if you're knocked out, then you just skip that character's turn. And it actually worked out all right when we were down to 2 players to just be playing with like the 2 living players, because the enemies took a while to like make their way forward towards where we were.
Yeah, we kind of had them rush 2 people. They were kind of sacrificed, and then we did our thing over here while they got back, because they don't stay at the bodies. They come for the alive people.
But Shepard is the most important character. So I think Shepard's a good one for somebody who's played the game before or who can easily pick up games to be, but it will mean there is kind of an MVP of the group, because the goal for Shepard is Shepard can't die. Everybody else can die tons of times. So you definitely want like Shepard to be a strong player.
Yeah, and someone who's gonna play kind of smart. And as they build up as well, like Shepard gets really strong by the end of the game and has like a lot of ways to take out enemies, but also is like your healer for the team. So it is kind of a big responsibility. And just a note, Jess made me be Shepard every game we've played so far.
Well, and you did a very good job.
Thank you.
So that does mean that no matter how many players are playing, it should take the same length.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it won't affect anything else other than like how much do you have to split your brain between players.
Moving on to components, I think this does a really good job of using like minimal amount of components in a way that makes it feel bigger than it actually is.
Yeah, I think so. And this is going to be a plus or minus depending on who you are. So for us, we love it because it's a nice slim box. It wasn't too much stuff. The setup is surprisingly quick for this kind of game. I love that there isn't like a big deck of items I've got to go through. I'm just kind of checking things off on a board. But there are definitely going to be some players who are like, I want a giant box of minis. I want all this stuff. I want all these enemies. I want a box of items that I'm going through. That's not going to be here, but I don't think you're going to miss it as much as you think you are. And for the players who don't want it, like us, and who want a box that fits on their already overpacked shelves, I was very pleasantly surprised by that.
Yeah, because I think the game typically takes maybe about an hour to play, so it's nice that there isn't like a setup that overextends its welcome. So for that kind of length of game, which is I think a really nice length, you don't want to spend 20 minutes setting up, and this does it really well. And I think the map board helps a lot with that because you're just able to flip to the mission and then it has where everything goes like right on the board as well.
It's like the Jaws of the Lion situation.
Yeah, and then the character sheets are all using like dry erase markers to mark things off, and we found that did the trick. We were able to save it between plays and still like erase it easily afterwards too.
Yeah, even like a few days later we erased it, wasn't a problem at all. And the few minis that you get, so you do have 6 minis of the 5 characters, including both genders for Shepard, and I thought those were all pretty solid. Again, we don't know the game that well, so we don't know how much they look like, what they look like in the video game, but I thought they all looked pretty cool. The character boards are fairly plain, and a lot of the stuff is a little bit plain. Again, that might just be what the video game is, so it's really hard to critique that, but it all did its job, I thought, pretty well. And the bad guys are all just pogs, so they're very simple. They're simple to find, they're simple to put out. The big bad guys all look video gamey. They're all taking the thing from the video game. So if you like the video game, it seems like that stuff's all there.
Yeah, you did reference the like you won't be drawing from a big deck of items, and that might be something that if you like the video game, because in the video game you are constantly like raiding crates and getting new types of weapons and switching between the weapons, and you don't have that. You don't have to like equip yourself with this weapon or that weapon, which we really like because we find that's a lot of upkeep. But if that's a part of the video game that you really enjoyed, was having a selection of weapons and choosing the right one for the right mission, you aren't going to get that. But where that comes through is the various abilities you unlock. So I do feel like you're getting something similar in an easier way.
Yeah, it's going to be a bit of a give and take, and it's going to be, some people are going to love it, some people are not, and they're going to wish there was another thing. I will say though that its name suggests, because this is Mass Effect Priority Hagalaz, which I'm almost certainly saying wrong, but that Priority Hagalaz suggests to me that there are going to be other missions and other stuff that's going to get mixed in here. I don't know that that's true for sure, but I got a feeling like it is.
And the other part that ties into components is the narrative book. So this is where you are directed to read a bit of the story, and it's usually just like a quick short paragraph with then the important bits that affect gameplay. So if you're like Sean and you don't like reading story, you can easily just...
I like reading. I don't like reading board, just so everyone doesn't think I'm a dum-dum. I just don't like reading within board games. It tends to not be the best of writing. And here again, it didn't grab me, but I love that I could skip it and you can just read that bottom part, and that is all of the text that you need for the actual game. And if you want the Mass Effect-y stuff, it's there, you can read it. You totally don't have to though, and I thought they did a really good job of separating those.
Definitely, but one thing if you're familiar with the video game is in the video game you get to like build personal relationships with the different characters, and all of that is part of the story. This does not have that. This is focusing on the missions and the combat, so you won't get a chance to like befriend different people, at least in this board game, maybe in the future ones.
And that brings us to final thoughts. And I think for me, one of the most important things is that if you're going to make this kind of game, bringing on the designers that they did, especially Eric and Lang, I think is just like kind of the perfect choice. He's done a whole bunch of this sort of IP stuff, but making it in that sweet spot that new players can get into it, but experienced players are still going to find something to enjoy. I thought he killed it with the team with Marvel United, and I think does a fairly equally good job here, even though this is a little bit higher level, a little bit harder than that. And this does have a few more question marks, because Marvel United, I don't think we've ever needed to look up something. We've never thought, oh, I wish there was an FAQ. Here, there were a few times where there was stuff that I'm still not sure that we played totally right, and once this is fully released, it will be interesting to see how well we did with it. But I think a lot of people are going to have those, just those little bits in there. But generally, this is a pretty smooth game that does quite a bit without too many components and too much overhead.
Yeah, so I think it works pretty well for people who are fans of the video game, particularly if you like the combat missions, as well as people who like cooperative dungeon crawlers, because it is a cooperative dungeon crawler set within this world, and you don't have to know about this world to be able to enjoy the game.
Yeah, I know very little about Mass Effect, and I'm usually not that into dungeon crawlers, but this one did win me over, and I think a big part of that is it just didn't fall into some of the traps that the like huge dungeon crawlers like Frosthaven have that just made it a lot more fun to me. There's a lot less admin, there were a lot fewer just like extra extraneous things. It just kind of got to the fun, gave me progression, and I enjoyed that.
And that progression did feel really rewarding because you definitely felt like you were getting stronger. And if you are finding like it's too easy, I think one of the things that can make it play harder is if you skip the loyalty missions. Because doing the loyalty missions just means you're going to be able to upgrade more characters. So if you play through and you're like, oh, that was a bit easy, then try without the loyalty, and the third one's going to feel real hard.
Especially if you do neither of the loyalty, then you're going in like basically just above a rookie and fighting the big guns,
yeah.
and then we're gonna see who's a big shot.
And this is one I'm definitely interested in playing back through with different characters and different missions.
And that is it. As we record this, this is just going out to pre-release right now, so you may not have had a chance to play it. But if you are watching this in the future, let us know what you think about the game. How well did it capture the video game? What are other video game board games that you've enjoyed?
Thank you so much for watching. As usual, please like, subscribe, and hopefully we'll see you next time for another game.